that now we have just 4 months of reserves left, 3 months, and then ultimately you have to go to the IMF. And then the IMF tells you have to cut your fiscal deficit, you have to cut your current account deficit by devaluing your money. When all that happens, the growth party comes to an end and we have a crisis.
We don't have money, and there does not seem to be any serious effort for increasing local production.
No, you can't. The next stage should be durable growth through increases in investment, through increases in exports, the way China and India have. But we never reach that stage because we are not willing to do the kind of reforms that India and China did a long time back. Dollar earning, we are bringing in foreign investment, but then foreign investment comes to take profit back. If we don't have, any exports, any dollar earning, what is that going to do? It's going to create another external deficit crisis.
Watch Federal Post. Bold and independent.
Hello, assalamu alaikum. This is Hasan Zafar with Talking Politics. I'm joined by Dr. Niaz Murtaza Sahab from Islamabad. A very quick introduction for Dr. Sahab. He has a PhD from Berkeley in economic development. Thank you very much, Dr. Murtaza, for joining me. Let's take this opportunity of reviewing the current economic situation of Pakistan, and that is we borrowed $7 billion from the IMF couple of months. The 24th standby program, 68% of which went back in terms of the interest that we had to pay on the previous loans. So we were left with 32%, which we have probably already spent. So that is where we are. How do you see the current economic situation in Pakistan after given all this?
Well, to understand the current economic situation, you have to understand how the Pakistani economy has been run for the last several decades. What we have is, short bursts of high economic growth, higher than, say, 5 to 6%. But it's very different from the kind of growth that you have in countries like China and India. In China and India, their growth is durable. The Chinese growth has been going on for 4 decades. The Indian growth for 3 decades. And the reason for that is that their growth is driven by increases in investment and productivity. So China's investment GDP ratio is 40%. India's ratio is 30%. Pakistan's ratio, when we had the peak growth under Musharraf, was about 18%. It was about 17% when we hit, 6% under Noon League, and it was 15% recently in 2022 under PTI. So our growth is not driven by investment and productivity increases. It is driven by increases in fiscal deficit, in money supply, and in current account deficit increases. But when fiscal deficit and money supply increases, that also increases inflation. When your current account deficit increases, your foreign reserves fall. When your foreign reserves fall, there is a panic in the market that now we have just 4 months of reserves left, 3 months, and then ultimately you have to go to the IMF. And then the IMF tells you have to cut your fiscal deficit, you have to cut your current account deficit by devaluing your money, you have to contract your money supply by increasing your interest rate. And when all that happens, the growth party comes to an end and we have a crisis.
We have a crisis, a perpetual crisis that does not seem to be coming to any conclusion. We have the IMF team sitting in Islamabad. Our finance minister is telling us that our friends, the so-called friends that we have, they are not ready to even give us another penny in terms of loans. We don't have money, and there does not seem to be any serious effort for increasing local production. Unless we have any local production, we have exports. How can we have any improvement in the economic situation?
No, you can't. So once, the IMF tells you to do that, the situation starts improving in terms of inflation coming down, your rupee becoming stable, and so on. So this is where we are in the first stage after an economic crisis, economic stability. The next stage should be durable growth through increases in investment, through increases in exports, the way China and India have. But we never reach that stage because we are not willing to do the kind of reforms that India and China did a long time back. What will we do? We'll just again spur economic growth through increasing fiscal deficit, through increasing current account deficit. So instead of going towards durable growth, we will go from economic stability to economic instability and another crisis. Now, if the government really wants to increase durable economic growth, the first thing is to increase investment. And the government is trying to do that, but there are three things wrong with the way it's doing that. First of all, there is a focus only on foreign investment through SIFC, Gulf money.
We
There
know.
is no focus on to increase local investment by increasing
Dr. Saab,
savings.
people are raising
Our
this
savings are among
question.
the lowest.
Dr. Saab, people are raising this question. When your own people are not investing in this country, how can you expect others to come and put money into this,
Exactly. So we first have to increase our savings and then channel it into productive sectors, right? Now, what we are trying to do is that even for those sectors which don't give us any exports, dollar earning, we are bringing in foreign investment. But then foreign investment comes to take profit back. If we don't have, any exports, any dollar earnings, what is that going to do? It's going to create another external deficit crisis. So
Yeah.
that's the first problem. Second problem is that we are just focusing on politicized foreign investment flows from friendly countries. We are not trying to bring in private flows through reforms. If you
Yeah.
look at India, China, they are not banking on just money coming from these rich countries like the Gulf countries, Saudi Arabia,
While
or
we have,
whatever.
Dr.
They
Saab,
basically focus on private flows.
while we have institutions like Board of Investment, we have a Ministry of Trade and Commerce, we have Finance Ministry. Now you create SIFC that bypasses all the departments and ministries and whatever the so-called red tapes are. Do you think this SIFC idea was driven by a cliche that only army can run this country and only the international donors and international friends, they don't trust our political governments or political players. They only trust the army, and now the army steps in. They take over the investment part as well, and nothing happens. It's a total shattering of that cliche, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, no other country has this kind of a, facilitation council. Look at the successful countries, China, India, the earlier Asian tigers. They did not progress by, having army men and generals sitting. What do they know about investment, right? And
Exactly.
this whole idea that, the foreigners only trust the army, that has been created. It's a figment of imagination to keep the civilians weak and just show that the only institution in Pakistan which is strong is the army. But that's not true. Look at India, look at Bangladesh. They have similar situation like us. But it was the civilians who drove the process.
With the failing
So it
of
has to
the
be the civilians.
with the failure of the
Yeah.
SIFC, now that entire narrative about the army can lead the nation in many ways, it
Not
has
nothing, nothing.
just fallen into
Nothing
yes.
so far, zero results. So, that's
Yes.
all this SIFC business is to, not go through the process of reform. Try to bring in
Right.
money without having to do any serious reform. Now, what kind of reforms do you need of your taxation structure in FBR? Nothing has been done. All the, subsidies that we give to sugar mafia, this mafia, that mafia, nothing has been done on that. We have to, reform our power sector. Zero results so far. We have to, reform our bureaucracy. So you
Yeah,
don't see any serious reform.
let
And
me
then the
share
sick
with
industry.
you. Uh, I had the opportunity of interviewing a trade union leader a couple of days ago. Simple question I asked, and he gave me absurd and ridiculous answers. His argument is there is corruption in this country, and therefore we don't want to pay taxes because our money will be ill-used. Look at this argument. Lahore region target was 10 billion rupees of tax collection, only 1.7 million, 17 lakh rupees have been collected from the entire region. And this man has the audacity to sit here and tell me that there is corruption in the country. Imagine that.
Well, there are two sides to corruption, right? The one that gives and the one who takes. The one who takes is the government, but who's the one who's giving the corruption? It's our businessmen who want to, break the law so that they don't have to pay taxes, so that they don't have to follow regulations. So that's just an excuse. China had very high corruption, still has very high corruption. India still has very high corruption. Bangladesh, if you look at the transparency
I know things in the UK, the kind of contracts that are given and the kind of kickbacks that are taken from the civil structure contracts. It's everywhere in the world. Is there no corruption in the United States? But that you don't.
So that is excuses. What we need to do is, first of all, do all these reforms. And even more important than doing reforms, we have to come up with a new economic vision, which has two sides. First of all, create those kind of industries domestically, which create jobs all over the country, so that we have equitable growth. And then the second thing is to develop a vision, do an analysis of the global economy, and find out niches where are more dynamic sectors of the economy, entrepreneurs can expand their exports so that our current account deficit is solved once and for all. But do you see anything like that happening? It's all the same.
What I fail to understand, Dr. Murtaza, we have brilliant people like yourself. I have spoken to all other notable economists in this country. Everybody seems to have a reasonable, workable solution to these problems. But the question remains, why is nothing happening?
Well, it's simple. Good outcomes come from good strategies. Good strategies come from strong teams. So if you want to know...
Let me put this question very clearly. What is the roadblock in implementing these good ideas?
That's what I'm telling you. Good outcomes come from good strategies. Good strategies come from a strong team. Do we have a strong team? You have all political appointments. If you look at the economic team, it's not just the finance minister, it's also all the other things you were talking about.
The finance minister,
Ministry of Industry, the investment board. What kind of people do you have sitting there?
Sir, because he's leading the team. You bring a banker to lead an economic team, it does not really convince me at all, by any means. No.
The finance minister...
Let me explain why. Because now the banking sector is thriving, and I have reasonable doubts. I have reasons to suspect that he is benefiting his banker friends more than the country's economy.
Yeah. Well, see, the finance minister is just one part of the picture. And his job is, or her job is, to only manage state finances. Of course, he or she can give some incentives in their budget to upstart the economy, but you basically need ideas from your Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Board of Investment, IT. These are the productive industries, right? This is where, the ideas for a new economy should be coming, and then you can bring in your social sectors, right? Health, education, poverty alleviation, economic growth. This is where you need the right people. For the Ministry of Finance, you need a PhD in public finance, right? So even for Ministry of Finance, he's not the right person. A banker is not the right person for
not the right person. You can see his report card. In 6 months, after 6 months in office, he comes and tells us nothing. That they are not paying us money. Were you aiming to collect money, borrow money from the donors? Was that all you were looking for? And he made ridiculous statements at Wilson Center in the United States. Nothing makes sense that he is telling them. And people who people who have put him in charge of the country's economic affairs. I would really want to ask them why.
Well, yeah, this is the thing. So the only time you can start having a hope is when you see competent people being appointed to all these economic ministries, both at the federal level and then also at the provincial level, because now provinces also matter. If you look at
Yeah.
India, the way some of their states manage their own economic growth, Gujarat, this and that. So you need
Yeah.
strong people at the provincial level in all these economic ministries, and then the social sector, so that you have, equitable, sustainable growth.
And
And
you
do
can
you
see
see
how well
any
the
signs?
Punjab government has performed on the economic front. 170
Yeah,
billion
that's
rupees deficit already.
Distribute laptop, distribute taxis, distribute this. This is not the way to have growth. First thing is develop a new economic vision of which sectors of the economy we are going to prioritize. How are we going to, generate the investment for that? We have to increase our savings the way India has gone and tapped into rural savings through digitalization. Have we seen anything like that in Pakistan? Nothing. We
Nothing.
have to increase our investment
But
through savings.
again, my question, what is stopping us from making the right decisions? Or who is stopping us?
Well, the basic thing is that, the rural that we have, the rural classes that we have, they are not able to, step into these kind of sectors. They can only thrive on the basis of that old economy, where you have subsidies, tax breaks, tax evasion. These are the kind of, politicians we have. These are the kind of businesses they have, and they will actually lose out if we have a new kind of an economy. They will be completely
Are
thrown
they, what you are saying, it refers to incompetency, that they are incompetent.
income.
Okay. One is,
More than that,
okay.
deliberately incompetent.
That's what I want to ask you. Is this simply a question of incompetency or more than that? And more than that means corruption, ill intentions. They don't mean it.
Well, corruption is one part of it, but it's, the ruling classes, their economic interests lie in those old kind of sectors which thrive on subsidies, on tax evasions, on breaking regulation, on exploiting labor, on exploiting the environment. They do not have, the background, the education, the mentality to be able to, make the transition to a new kind of economy.
And why am
And
I
that's why they
asking this
don't
question?
even.
What compels me to ask this question? The IMF gives you $7 billion, asking you reduce the government size. You increase the government size in that respect. Excellent. Then you have a tax collection target, nothing happens. Now we have 400 billion rupees shortfall in the current fiscal year, which may go up to 1,000 billion rupees by the end of the fiscal year, and that is where we are. 70 billion rupees you give to the FBR officers. Why?
Zero.
You are throwing away money like anything. You are buying cars and making bungalows for the bureaucracy who is not performing at all. Why? We have reasons to ask
Exactly.
you these questions.
Reform doesn't suit them. They thrive through these old kind of economic tricks, and they will continue to doing that. And even the IMF prescriptions are very incomplete. They talk about reforms, but they don't even talk about the most important kind of reforms. It's very patchy kind of reforms, narrow, superficial kind of
Yeah,
reform.
yeah.
So we have to go beyond that and develop our own economic reform agenda, which identifies more productive sectors, which goes and talks about how to increase our savings, which identifies new export sectors, identifies the kind of support the government will have to give our entrepreneurs to enter those niches, the R&D, the capacity, the investment, all of that. If you look at the Asian tigers, this is the kind of role the developmental state played there. It wasn't the new liberal state which, just creates economic stability and then, expects that the private sector will take things forward. Our private sector is as much part of the problem as our state. In fact, they're two parts of the same coin, the two sides of the same coin,
Cannot agree
same
more.
families on
Cannot
both
agree
sides.
more.
So you
Certainly.
have to go beyond that.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
with the current setup, or let me put it more clearly and bluntly, with the current government and their economic team, do you see things getting better? Do you see any hope?
I don't see any hope. I will see hope if they start appointing competent people. That will be the start, and then will come the good strategies, and then finally the outcome. So you can predict the future, the next 3 or 4 years. If the team is not there, how will you have good strategies? How will you have good outcomes? Zero chance.
Thank you so much,
So the
Dr.
starting point is competent people.
Certainly.
And they won't come because they will not suit our
They
ruling
don't
classes.
suit anyone in this country, or at least in the current setup. Competent people
Yeah.
suit them.
I mean, forget the private sector. Look at the milbus. Yeah, what kind of companies do we have in that sector? All of them thrive on subsidies, on government fiat, on monopoly creation. Do you have even one milbus which is into export, dynamic export, new kind of exports? Nothing. So don't
Nothing.
expect anything
Absolutely.
that side either.
That's how it is.
Don't expect anything from them.
Thank you so much, Dr. Niaz Murtaza, for
My
your
pleasure.
my
My
pleasure.
pleasure.
And thank you very much for watching. Khuda Hafiz, Pakistan, Zindabad.